On a cruise ship, we travel the Baltic Sea along routes that have connected the cultures of the region since ancient times. A journey of discovery in the extraordinary light of a short Nordic summer. In this episode, we'll meet cheerful tango musicians, not so lonely lighthouse keepers, young Finnish women with old-fashioned cleaning habits, and Nordic heat lovers. Our tour around the Baltic Sea takes us from Sweden to Finland, then to St. Petersburg, and on to the Baltic countries. On this leg of the journey, our cruise ship will pass by the Gulf of Bothnia and drop anchor in the port of Helsinki. From there, we'll move up the Gulf to near Porvoo, down again to Porkkala Peninsula, and then back to the Finnish capital. Early on a midsummer's morning, the port of Helsinki is now just a few nautical miles away. Finland is among the few countries that extend to the extreme north of our planet Earth. A full third of it lies beyond the Arctic Circle. Some old sea dogs say they can smell land even before the first seagulls appear. Finland is almost as big as Germany, yet except for its capital, very sparsely populated. Before the ship docks, an ample supply of rations is secured and breakfast prepared. On this line, passengers are served at table and only what they've ordered. That means much less food waste than with an all-you-can-eat buffet, but it also requires more staff at mealtimes. Here there was one crew member on board for every 2 to 3 passengers, around 1,000 crew for direct passenger service alone. While vacationers usually stay on the ship for only a few days at a stretch, the crew always remain on board, often for a whole year at a go, on duty 24/7, an arduous job. Crew members work behind the scenes, making sure cabins are tidied and clean towels appear like magic daily. Speaking of magic, sometimes a steward, here, Mioko, will conjure up a little surprise for a special occasion, like a passenger's birthday. Many on the housekeeping staff on this ship are from the Philippines. Here, they have 1,253 cabins to contend with. And while Mirko works his way down the long corridor, his boss, Maria, the executive housekeeper, is never far behind, checking to see that everything is ship-shape and spotless. A pleasure cruise is, after all, about service, and guests should have no cause for complaint. Their stay on board should be an all-around unbroken experience of well-being. At least, that's the goal.
We do daily random spot checks in the cabins to see if everything's clean and functioning or whether repairs are needed.
Is it difficult to keep the guests happy?
Basically, it's very easy. They're here on vacation. They want to have fun and be entertained. They want to feel comfortable. In that sense, we have a very nice job.
The maritime hospitality specialists aim for a cultivated ambience. No recorded, piped-in music here. a live string quartet is de rigueur. Cruises are meant to exude an aura of luxury. Extras are available at a surcharge. And while the passengers on board were leisurely greeting the day, at our shore leave destinations, daily life was already in full swing. Vera Lapalainen and Anneli Res had the day off and were using it to clean house, the traditional way. A public washing square at the docks, which in Helsinki adjoin the residential neighborhoods, offers everything they need. It's all about carpets. That much we can reveal.
When I was little, our mothers just threw the carpets in the snow and ordered us to jump around on them to help wash them with the snow. Then the carpets would be hung up to dry for a few hours. They were fresh and clean, and not at all wet either.
More about that later on. Further west along the coast, far from any town or village, like every morning, Jussi and Mikael were raising the Finnish flag over their lonely outpost near Porkkala. When Pentti arrives, the three go out on patrol. The team works for the Coast Guard, monitoring the border not far from Estonia, and providing security in the former restricted zone. The weather is good. It promises to be a calm day. In Helsinki, in a derelict docklands area, a new residential district is now taking shape. The apartments are aimed at the luxury market, 7,000 euros per square meter. But the Guild of Finnish Musicians has also taken up residence here in their Gildenhaus. Later, we'll visit Jarmo Julkinen's group ukulele lesson. The sky was now bright and clear. Dozens of ships lay at anchor in glorious sunshine in Helsinki harbor. Our ship has not been assigned a berth at the coveted central quay of Katajanokka, so we have to head for another harbor a bit farther out of town. Captain Jens Troja has decided to back into the parking space. Departure would be safer and easier with no risky turning maneuver. You never know how the weather might develop, especially the wind. A fascinating performance for passengers. Daily routine for the crew. Not long afterwards, the vessel was given the all clear from the Port Authority, and the first passengers set off on their shore leave. Helsinki has a lot to offer. We arrive in the world's coldest major city, population 600,000 plus, just in time to see it from its sunniest side. The July sun is bright and there is light for 18 hours of every day. Not so in winter, when a mere 6 hours of dusky light interrupt each long, dark day. A tram tour is a good way to see the sights when you've just a few hours of stopover time. Here, a German-speaking guide provides running commentary. The first electric streetcar line was built here in 1901. But the tram is also a good means of undertaking your own expeditions, especially when the weather is changeable. Here on the left is one of our most beautiful buildings, the Säätiötalo, House of the Estates. This tram line leads to numerous points of interest, such as the Lutheran Helsinki Cathedral and the Eastern Orthodox Uspensky Cathedral. In the 1960s, the extension of the streetcar network ground to a halt. The Finnish winters were just too cold, and domestic innovations also left something to be desired, so plans were changed and used German tram cars were purchased, some of them still in service today. The short sojourn ends at Helsinki Central Station, an imposing example of Finnish Art Nouveau. Right on the edge of town, a purpose-built little wooden pier is the scene of a curious activity. Vera and Anna go there to wash carpets. They use seawater, which only works because the Baltic Sea isn't very salty. After the Ice Age, it was actually a freshwater sea and only became brackish later on after a water exchange with the briny North Sea. The two women use eco-friendly pure soap, carpet cleaning as it was done in Grandma's day.
I think this way is much more traditional. Yes, there's a lot connected to this custom. And I can be outdoors and still be doing something practical. We don't need to go to the fitness studio at night.
With a large wringer, they press the water out of the soggy rugs. So the wet carpets are at least a bit less weighty and dry faster.
Yep, you really feel you're at work here. And how I feel it in my hands. And especially my shoulders.
Olkapäissä varsinkin.
Finland is called the land of 1,000 lakes. A wild understatement. There are 187,888 lakes in the land. After the Ice Age, when the glaciers melted and the earth, freed from its heavy burden, slowly rose up, many troughs were left behind, which then filled with water, the Finnish lakeland, that nowadays beautifully reflects the passing clouds, weather permitting. That's why this is Aurora Johansson's terrain. She's a cloud hunter, in as far as clouds can even be hunted.
Pilveä ei voi pakottaa, se on
You can't force the clouds, as you can't bend a person's nature. They are how they are each day, and you have to be content with that.
At the moment, the sky was a uniform gray, one great big cloud.
Ne opettaa keskittyä.
Right now, they're teaching us to concentrate on them just as they are.
Se on semmoinen tila,
You can't meet this moment with a particular expectation.
Tai se tulee vastaan semmoisena kuin se on.
The cloud comes to us as it is.
Ottaa siitä hetkestä kiinni ja
But when you've learned to receive the existing state like that, then you don't chase a certain notion. You just perceive what really is, without dreaming of something else.
Silloin siitä kiinni semmoisena kuin se on.
Inspired by a group of cloud spotters formed in England, Aurora too took up the chase. It's become an enriching part of her life.
In my opinion, you love them the best just as they are. Yes, they're constantly changing, and you learn to love each phase in its own right. And you learn many different things from them.
Oppii tykkäämään semmoisenaan kuin ne on. Ja niistä oppii erilaisia asioita esim. Ehkä nyt tämmöisestä
Like right now, for example, with a bit of water dropping down. Now you can understand that clouds also have good days and bad days.
On huonompia päiviä ja hyvimpiä päiviä, mutta mun mielestä
But for Aurora, it isn't all just about quiet observation. She also appreciates the aesthetic dimension, clouds as artworks of nature, which she likes to capture in photos and further process to make her own images. Aurora is in fact an art student and loves to photograph clouds. She can imagine they might become the leitmotif of her work.
ihania omalla tavallaan.
They're all extraordinary, really. But my favorite type of cloud is the nice, round, lovely-looking type. Soft and fluffy.
esteettisen näköinen, aika semmoinen
against a magnificent blue sky.
ihanaan siniseen taustaan ja sitten
Aurora is usually alone on her cloud spotting excursions. Finns in general, in their vast, sparsely populated country, have a special relationship to solitude. As a Finnish saying goes, closeness without conflict is found only at the cemetery. On this leg of the journey, our cruise ship put in outside of Helsinki. We then took a day trip to the lakeland near Lahti and would now head back to Helsinki before continuing on to the skerries off the charming port city of Porvoo and later on to the Porkkala Peninsula. Cliffs, boulders, and little islands define the strategic position of the capital. One island, however, right in front of the Parliament building, is man-made, the Alas Sea Pool. With 2 heated swimming pools, 28 degrees Celsius all year round, and an unheated natural seawater pool that even in summer offers a bracing plunge of just 10 degrees Celsius. Directly adjacent, Katajano-Kanluoto, a former pilot island. Many travelers on the passing ships ask themselves, who on earth lives there? The answer? No one. Years ago, the island was up for sale for a price of 1 million euros. Not much has happened since. The ferries to the island of Suomenlinna pass Katajano-Kanluoto hourly. Over the centuries, Finland was conquered by various Baltic Sea region rulers: Swedes, Russians, Germans. Suomenlinna, the Finns' fortress, was originally erected by Sweden, where it's still known as Sveaborg. The burg was actually considered impenetrable, but in 1808, after a brief siege, Russian troops stormed the stronghold. Nowadays, the old stone bastion has more than just a fascinating history to offer. Visitors can also enjoy the surrounding parks, gardens, and restaurants. A green oasis just outside the capital. "50 kilometers further east lies the delta of the river Porvunjoki, with its numerous skerries, as these rock islets, polished smooth by the last ice age, are known. Big, sharp-edged boulders also pepper the seafloor here, hidden just below the water's surface. Get too close and the consequences can be serious. So the rule for an excursion here is always follow the boat ahead and never leave the fairway. That's what these 2 cruise ship passengers were doing. Just married 3 days before at sea, they were celebrating with an extra special day trip. Anyone in Finland, after brief instruction, may pilot a motorized vessel with up to 20 horsepower. Any adult, any child, with no license whatsoever. Here, the ability to move about freely on the water is a natural part of daily life. But even a motorcraft with only 20 horsepower can still act like a real speedboat, as these day trippers got to experience firsthand. You have to keep your wits about you and not get distracted by romance. All of a sudden, the pilot throttled the engine and Further upstream, in the interior of the country, lies the port city of Porvoo. Founded 800 years ago, it is Finland's second oldest city. With its secure location on a navigable river near the coast, it played an important role in Baltic sea trade early on, but was never a Hanseatic city. The portside buildings were once warehouses where goods from countries far and wide were stored before being packed up for the journey eastwards, on smaller ships or overland by horse-drawn coach. The brightly colored buildings in the Old Town section are mainly made of wood. And you can smell it too. The pungent scent of wood planks, tree trunks, and sap fills the air. Finland is rich in timberland, and almost everything here used to be made of the plentiful natural resource. The same goes for the 14th century cathedral. Its tower, roof framework, and extension buildings are all made of wood. Over the centuries, it has fallen victim to fire 5 times, burning right down to the foundation walls. The last fire was in 2006, caused by arson. Like Porvoo, the city of Turku, the Finnish capital until into the 19th century, was also almost completely destroyed by a terrible fire. One reason the Finns set their sights on a new capital. Helsinki, only an hour's drive from Porvoo. Wherever possible, new buildings here were made of stone instead of wood. That helps make sense of the German expression, as rich as stone. You had to be wealthy to afford solid, fireproof building materials. But in today's Helsinki, many houses are still made of the indigenous renewable resource. Residents of this neighborhood all take a mandatory course at the local fire station, where they learn what to do in a worst-case scenario. It's a civic duty. Even now, Finland has a relatively high rate of house fire deaths. We join Fire Chief Taisto Hakkala on his inspection rounds on a Saturday afternoon when many residents of the Wooden House district are at home.
Hei, Taisto Hakkala pelastuslaitokselta. Mä tulisin tekemään palotarkastusta.
Joo, kiitos. Tule sisään.
Even for an official like himself on official business, it's customary to remove one's street shoes when entering a private household. First stop the open hearth. Good dry wood, a spark guard, exemplary.
Mutta en usko, että tässä on mitään huomautettavaa. Ja kun tää pysyy tässä kunnossa, niin tää on turvallinen.
Joo, kun se on uusittu sisältä.
Okei, niin.
Taisto wanted to know what sort of insulation material was installed in the 100-year-old house. Wood shavings or mineral wool? Where were the sand buckets, fire extinguishers, and water points? How do things look in the kitchen? Were the spaces behind the fridge and stove cleaned regularly so that no inflammable dust bunnies could gather there?
Onko tässä painovoimainen? Toinen on unohtaminen.
Another cause of fire is simply forgetting. Say you're sitting with friends next door and forget that you've left food cooking on the stove that can burn. Or maybe you go to pick up something at the store, run into a neighbor and end up chatting for 2 hours, and meanwhile something happens at home. In other words, you must never leave fire unattended.
Eli sähkölaitteet ei koskaan saa jättää valvomatta, eikä elävää tulta.
Taisto was able to confirm that the fire extinguisher was regularly refilled, as it should be. Otherwise, the extinguishing powder gets clumpy. Taisto left this inspection thoroughly satisfied. What did he, as a firefighter, think of this form of architecture?
Totta kai jos
Of course, when a wooden house goes up in flames, the fire spreads more quickly and the damages are greater. And when people are at home, it's very dangerous. But statistically, living in a house made of wood today is no more dangerous than living in other types of housing. A firefighter witnesses terrible things in the course of his working life, which has turned me into a kind of control freak.
Voi sanoa, että ehkä tulee hieman tämmöiseksi kontrollifriikiksi. Toisaalta
On the other hand, some people in our profession are especially attracted to risk. Many firefighters do some kind of extreme sport as a hobby, really taking it to the limit. So there's the strict caution, but then many also enjoy the high risk. We strike a balance to equalize the horror of our firefighting culture. Every morning at the start of their shift, the team does a complete equipment check. Every hose, every pump, every power saw. So they're ready to spring to the rescue of the wooden house district if need be. In general, the most common causes of fire have to do with human behavior. In other words, how one lives. Statistically, the two most problematical factors are being a male and consuming alcohol.
Tämä näkyy muissakin tapaturmissa ja onnettomuuksissa merkittävänä syynä.
So in short, the above-average numbers of fire deaths in Finland has less to do with the culture of wooden houses, but is more a matter of one's sex and lifestyle. The largest risk factors are being a man and hitting the sauce. Just a few kilometers away, Jätkäsaari. It was Sunday morning. Jarmo Julkkonen has instructed his students to unpack their instruments and tune them. Many people think you have to press the ukulele against your chest like this. But it's really better if it slants forward a bit so the bottom can vibrate for more resonance. 80% of all Finnish hit songs are in a minor key, including the piece the class was about to practice. A minor. The tango rhythm is very simple. 4 down strums, pretty much the way you dance the tango.
Mennään vielä alusta. Eli D-mollit lähtee liikenteeseen. Okei, ja suoraan sieltä laulun melodia kohdasta.
Jarmo took it again from the top. The musicians were rehearsing the popular s01e02 tango in the bistro of the Guild, a sort of umbrella organization for all musicians in Finland. Later, he'll perform the piece on stage. A large percentage of Helsinki's professional musicians work and live in the Guildhouse. Thanks to government subsidies, their rent is affordable. The neighborhood as a whole is growing in leaps and bounds, and the same goes for real estate prices. Jarmo is actually a guitarist. A grant program gave him the impulse to try the ukulele. My contract stipulated I couldn't compete with local musicians. I had to back out of many festivals because guitar playing was part of my publicly financed job. So I thought, you can always go along and play the ukulele. And that's how he discovered the advantages of this special instrument, which Jarmo feels is well suited to the Finnish mentality and to tango. Passionate and also melancholic, just like our Lakeland landscape. Of course, tango is also a nice way to meet people. The tough Finns are actually quite shy, and dancing the tango gives them at least a chance of mingling with the opposite sex. The Finnish melancholy surely comes from the fact that for so long we lived alone, at great distances from each other, and that we always dreamed, like in the tango lyrics, of going to faraway places. But the Finns never went far. We've mainly stayed here, where we've been for centuries. back at port. Cruise ships need a constant energy supply, even when docked at the quay. Air conditioning, lighting, kitchen and restaurants, all in continuous operation. So the generators have to run nonstop too, on diesel, which pollutes the environment. External electrical outlets right on the jetty would be a good alternative, but in all of Europe, they're as yet only available at a few harbors. A vessel like this runs on electric motors, but the energy to drive them comes from onboard diesel power stations in the engine room, regularly checked by Captain Jens Toya. There are always 2 engine rooms with 1 large and 1 small diesel per room. So 4 diesels in total, 2 small, 2 large. None of them here are on now, but when we go to the other engine room, it'll be much louder because we have the 1 engine running. When additional generators are started up, dark smoke billows from the chimneys, particulate matter and sulfur compounds. During continuous operation at sea, special gas purifying units filter them out. The scrubber technology filters out 99% of the sulfur content. But that doesn't happen out here. It's all done within the chimney. That's where the scrubber is, the desulfurization unit that includes injection nozzles that clean the exhaust. Exhaust gas pollution and energy efficiency remain critical issues. Despite all efforts to save fuel, cruises are still major resource consumers. No shipping company wants to lose customers due to their guilty conscience because the environment is paying the price for their dream trip. Newly built ships will also be able to run on environmentally friendly liquid gas. But for now, that's just a nice prospect because most ports still don't have the fueling stations. Our cruise ship was built in 2015. Every effort is made to keep the engines and filter units performing optimally. Slow streaming and the like are all the rage now. The cruise industry also tries to operate as economically and ecologically as possible. At the moment, it's very economical because we're running on just 1 engine. So all is well. We're happy about that. But sometimes we have no choice but to pick up the speed so we can hit our scheduled arrival and departure targets. But at the moment, we can say we're sailing at eco speed. In areas of the ship not accessible to passengers, there is a network of what are known as freeways, the vital supply arteries of every mammoth cruise vessel. Environmental Officer Hilary Hornell was on her way to the garbage sorting area.
And this is the incinerator room, where all of the ship's garbage is collected and sorted. We also have the ability to compress and break all of our glass down and begin our incineration operations. So right now what we have is just daily garbage that is coming down from any kind of operation, from galleys, from restaurant, from housekeeping. And what we'll do is we will put it into the incinerator, shred it. It will then go down to the silo where it will wait to be thrown into the fire, essentially. So from there, what will happen is that it's turned into ash, and we will collect that ash on the lower decks where we can then eventually offload that to specific vendors.
With a good 2,000 passengers and 1,000 crew on board, a cruise like this generates as much garbage as a small town. Recyclables, such as glass and metal, are sorted out and saved for vendors at the ports of call. The rest is incinerated. After the hazardous waste items are removed, too. The sewage is channeled to the deepest recesses of the vessel. It used to be dumped untreated into the sea. Nowadays, it's purified in an onboard treatment plant, where the stench is quite intense.
At the end of it, it's clear, there's no color, there's nothing floating in this water. it is essentially drinkable, potable water, but I wouldn't recommend it just because of the smell.
But even the treated water may no longer be simply dumped into the Baltic Sea as we go, because the authorities would have to test it beforehand. Instead, it's collected by tank trucks at the next port stop. An excursion to Porkkala, 50 kilometers outside of Helsinki. This is the workplace for some very solitary professionals. Border guards who often go for days on end at their lonely outposts without seeing another soul besides their comrades on patrol. Men like Pentti Alapelto, who monitor the coastline and are also first responders to emergencies at sea.
Aikanaan kun palvelin vartiolaivalla.
There are times, often in fact as commander of a Coast Guard boat, when you think in a fall storm, the sea is empty, just the odd merchant ship, the waves are churned up, and you're out there in the dark. Yes, then you do sometimes feel lonely.
Tunsi itsensä aika yksinäisenä.
Until just a few years ago, the Porkkala Peninsula was an exclusion zone. After the end of the Second World War, Russia had continued to occupy the area. The shore is still littered with the ruins of atomic bomb-proof Red Army command bunkers. The coastal border guards always patrol in a team of 3. Depending on the weather, things out here can get too risky for someone all alone. This system also helps guard against all too much loneliness.
Varmaan kolmistaan on helpompi.
Of course, it's easier with 3 of us because you always have someone to talk to.
Ja tavallaan
The chemistry is right in a little work unit like this. Generally, the rough edges are smoothed over time, and then there are no more stumbling blocks in the daily routine.
ja tavallaan se
But it's still lonely because you're away from your family,
erilläolo, niin
especially when you have small children, and your wife calls and tells you your child is ill, has a fever, and so forth.
ja lapsi sairastuu ja vaimo soittaa, että nyt lapsi on kipeänä kuumeessa.
These situations are perhaps the most difficult psychologically because there's nothing you can do to help.
Vaikeimpia tilanteita.
At the edge of their territory lives a specialist of an altogether different sort. Veikka Gustafsson, the only Finn to have climbed all of the world's 8,000-meter peaks. As a mountaineer, he was already experienced at being alone. When border guards come to call, some colleagues have to stay on board. The sea is too rough and the shoreline too rocky for docking. Only border guard Mikael Rehn has the occasion to enjoy the half-hour's break and a coffee. Veikka explained that he isn't always there to look after the lighthouse and the seals. In fact, he often spends the whole week traveling around to schools giving presentations. As a motivational coach, he uses stories of his extreme mountaineering to encourage the young Finns. When you give 15 school lectures in a week, that's 3 talks a day. By the time Friday comes around, you're ready to go somewhere where you don't have to talk to anyone, like here. You can cry to the seals if you want to, but that's about it. Veikka regularly retreats for a few days to his elected exile. Does he enjoy the solitude? I'm not afraid here, but it can still get risky sometimes nonetheless. More often on the way here than in the lighthouse building itself. I've always thought this building has been standing here for almost 100 years. Many families with children have lived here within these 2.5-meter thick stone walls. So fear of being alone is not an issue for Veikka. He says whoever lives here has to be good at assessing risks. It's the difference between being courageous and being reckless. Yeah, there's a thin line between bravery and foolishness. And when stupidity takes the lead around here, the same as in the Himalayas, it won't necessarily be forgiven. But courage and tenacity are somehow part of the Finnish mentality. Yes, for me it's something perfectly normal. I'm used to getting along fine here in the Finnish wilderness at all times of the year. It's certainly been useful in a way, being a Finn. I'm sure it's in our genes, in our history. Yes, it's true. And there's another dimension to it, the living conditions here being what they are. When you're staying at a place like this, you have to think about what you'll need beforehand and prepare yourself. Finns know that if you want to be able to eat in the spring, you have to think about it in the fall. That's not necessarily the case in the tropics. Here you have to prepare yourself. It might be the case that no one can come for a visit.
Sä menet jonnekin, sä oot yksin, sun pitää varautua siihen hetkeen, että kukaan ei pääse sun luokse.
After little excursions to the islands off Helsinki, the tour moved on to the Skerries by Porvoo, and then to the coast near Porkkala. Now it was back to Helsinki. The sauna has pride of place in Finnish culture. There are an astonishing 2 million sweat baths in a country of just 5 million inhabitants. Many of them are now electric, but the real original smokehouse saunas were heated like this. A fire of stripped birch logs, bark sullies the smoke, is ignited early in the morning. The hot smoke is channeled into the sauna spaces above, the walls of which are completely black as a result. Then the sauna attendant airs the place out before the first guests arrive. In the birthplace of sauna culture, the men and women generally sweat separately, except for the occasional family day. This was a men's-only day. The Finnish Sauna Society in Helsinki is reserved for an exclusive membership roster and VIP guests, such as a German transplant who's lived in Finland for almost 30 years, author Roman Schatz, a celebrity. His birth country has a population density of 250 people per square kilometer, so he appreciates living in a land where it's only 17.
In der Sauna kann man ja nicht so.
In the sauna, you can't really keep your distance. The Finns, or we Finns, sit right up close to each other, skin to skin, stark naked. And this here is a very traditional, upscale venue. Before the Finnish high society discovered golf in the 90s after joining the EU, everyone who was anyone was a member of this club. Traditionally, when a Finnish man built his house somewhere out in the woods, before he had even cleared his plot, the first thing he erected was the sauna. Because it was easy to build. Then you had a place that was easy to heat, where it's easy to maintain sanitary conditions. You can give birth to babies, store food supplies, brew beer there, use it as a dryer, and in winter, you could put your dead grandpa in there for 3 weeks until the horse-drawn sled came from the next market town to collect him. The sauna was an all-rounder, the core of civilization. The house and all the rest were built around it. A Finnish sauna was also the scene of heated Cold War political negotiation. Prime Minister Kekkonen is said to have met with Khrushchev naked in the sauna and emerged triumphant with Finland's neutral status. Traditionally, when you have to discuss something very seriously and honestly, you do it in the sauna. There's an old Finnish saying, but it's said with a good dose of self-irony, and that is, we Finns are happiest when we can sit alone in the dark sauna and contemplate death. This sauna, by the way, smelled of birch wood smoke. No essential oils in the infusion water, which anyone can pour with a nod of okay from the others. No master of sauna ceremonies here. The Baltic Sea plunge, after every sauna session, offers a bracing 12 degrees Celsius finish. But the impression of sociability is deceptive. It's learned from the get-go through rearing, education, the environment, the mentality. A person must get by on his own in this life. Of course, you've got friends, you've got relatives, and you can count on them. But the vast existential void, that's something everyone here carries around with them. Here you always had much more physical, geographical space. Out of that grew a culture of politeness where you try to give others as much personal space as possible. Say you step into an elevator in the morning and there are 3 or 4 people in there. You don't look everyone in the eyes and say, "Good morning, have a nice weekend." No, you look down at your shoes, leave them alone, and keep your mouth shut. You keep yourself to yourself. But a visit to the sauna traditionally includes the service of the washerwoman who scrubs down your back and legs with a hard brush. But that's really the limit to physical contact in public. Roman decided to stay in Finland nevertheless because he had fallen in love with a Finnish woman. Hormonal migration, he says, and still doesn't regret it. Some people do ask me if I'm not fed up yet. It is really cold and expensive here. And the quality of life. See, Germans have more money, can speed along on the German Autobahn as fast as a car can go, but the quality of life here in Finland is significantly higher. The individual, we're 5.5 million, and each one of us has more weight. In former times, many taverns and pubs had their own sauna. After long stints at sea, Finnish sailors longed for mainly 3 things: decent food, a good drink, and finally, a really good sweat. Nowadays, the big ships, like the giant icebreakers in the port of Helsinki, have a sauna on board. In addition to sweating, there's another Finnish national passion. In the tower of the former Workingmen's Club, there are regular dance events to further it. Tango, which in Finland is often danced more closely than the Argentine version. Roman shots on stage with the band Valilan Tango and the ukulele player Jaamo Julkkonen. He explained with a twinkle in his eye that the origins of this dance music had less to do with Argentina than with German march music. To 1, 2, 3 you simply add an und. And, hey presto, the German tango. Roman presented his version of the Satuma tango.
verblüht, wo nie ein Traum vergeht. O des Menschen Sorge, weil die milden Wind verweht. O könnt ich doch nur einmal dieses Traumgestade sehen. Ewig würd ich bleiben, niemals mehr ihm widerstehen. Doch weil ich keine Schwingen habe, klingt mein Lied als Pfeil.
Back to the cruise ship. It was time to hoist anchor. While the swimming hotel complex set off for the next destination, the day's impressions lingered. Finland, the destination of this episode, was a refreshing taste of an intact foreign culture at the edge of Europe. A treasure to be stowed away carefully in our hearts.